Hello, Massive and crew. Welcome back to another episode of Reels and Riddims brought to you by Carry On Friends in partnership with the Style to the Vibes and Breadfruit Media. And me well excited today because we have our special guest, Miss Alexandria. I'm not going to mess up our name with the extra H's. And of course, my co-host with the mostest. So, Michaela, big up the people them. And then Alexandra, you're not a stranger. So, heal up the people them after Michaela. Run it, Michaela.
Wagwan family, Wagwan. Welcome, Alexandria. You're no stranger, but always love to have you on and chatted with you. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, Wagwan, Wagwan people. Thank you, Carrie and Michaela, for having me. It's a pleasure always to be over here on the Reels and Rhythm side.
Yes, yes. So, like I said, very excited because we are about to talk about the big bad Queenie. And it's also a good way for us to wrap up this season of Reels and Rhythms. It's been a festive season, and so I think we're literally going to wrap up the season on a bang based on our Queenie and our friend named Guan.
Well
So,
festive, well festive.
well, since I heard a hunty in the room, Michaela's junior hunty, right? Alexandra, why don't you tell the Massive and crew what Queenie is about, and then we'll just jump in.
Sure. So originally, Queenie was a book published by Candice Carty Williams in 2019. Recently, as of June 7th, I believe Hulu debuted their mini series of sorts, I guess you would call it, which was a translation of the book into a mini series, of course. Obviously, as we know, with anything that's a translation from a book to a movie or TV show, it's not exactly the contents of the book or translated into the show, but overall it is a story about a young adult coming of age Jamaican British woman, and her journey just in her 20s, discovering herself. I think there are great topics in terms of self-worth and self-love, her negotiations with her relationships. Obviously there's stuff related to family issues and generational traumas, sexuality and consent, but really just her sort of evolution and trying to understand herself amidst what can be called chaos. We might just call it life and figuring out yourself in your 20s, which I think, as somebody in her 20s, can be a crazy time sometimes. But yes.
Michaela, I'm gonna come back to you. I'm gonna be honest, right? So me never read the book. I went back into my Audible history because I listened to the book, and I probably got to an hour and 45 minutes, and then I stopped reading the book. I said I can't manage, and I'm full disclosure. I'm way past where Queenie was in this book. So I had to take junior Auntie Michaela advice and put myself back into my 20s to see if I can relate to a certain degree with Queenie and what happened there. I mean, outside of where she is and what's happening, I think, like you said, Alexandra, the themes are regardless of age group and generation, some of them. But I love that you read the book and Michaela and I didn't, because this is a flip from when we talked about Black Cake, when I read the
Mm.
book and was big bad and hangry, huffing and puffing like the wolf about what is right and what wasn't a proper translation. So this is a different position to be in. Michaela, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I have the book. I meant to read it before, it came out. And I actually started it this year. So I got through what was episode 1 of the series. And really just time. So I had the physical book. So that's where I went wrong. I bought the physical book a while ago. And I bought a copy for my sister. But physical books, I love them. I don't always have the time to read them. So I don't have the same context as Alexandria. So leaning on you to tell us about the accuracy specifically. But I did enjoy seeing it come to life, and especially with Candice Carty Williams just coming off of Champion, and the excitement that we saw around that, and other British actors really taking front stage, if you will, in this particular series as well. So I'm excited for the conversation.
We're not going through it like how we did Champion episode by episode. So, big takeaway from the series. Alexandra, your takeaway. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let's start there.
And I'm talking the series and the book, or just the series?
Say what up on your chest. Get it
All
off of your
right.
chest.
Well, before I even talk about this series, I love the book. First off, the book Deep Pretty. I know you guys have seen the cover if you've owned the book. The book was beautiful, even if it never. I mean, obviously, as a Jamaican, I'm gonna be biased and say, "Yeah, man, true say is me." But outside of that, I would have bought the book probably regardless, just because it was cute, and then it did come in different color. The original was orange, and then
Orange, yeah.
yes, but then she made it debuted in different colors too. So it was just a beautiful book, I think, cover wise. Them said don't judge a book by its cover, but I was a fan regardless as a black woman. First and foremost, I know I loved the book. Reading it, I was younger than Queenie, I believe, when it first debuted, or probably around the exact same age. And so for me, it was laughs. I remember reading it during my lunch break at work, and I was deading with laugh. And ironically, I was at the time in a lot of like black women's reading groups, and there's bookstagrammers and all these people to follow online, and a lot of people, a lot of black women hated the book. I can't remember at the time now whether they were women, from of Caribbean descent or from the Caribbean, or if it was people abroad, etc. But I feel like to some degree the book got a lot of hate, or just people saying maybe they couldn't finish it because it was cringy or whatever to them. And I felt like it was unfair representation, especially um at least the spaces and the people that I heard from. I'll speak to specifically those spaces as opposed to everybody. But I enjoyed it. I think for some people it might have been it was there's a lot of messiness, but as I said, right, life is messy. And I think sometimes we want things to be tied up in a bow in a certain way, and fairy tale endings and stuff, which I don't think that was necessarily the point of it, right? It's
Mm.
that we're along our journey and we're figuring out as we go. It doesn't need to, suddenly we see Queenie like girl bossing, and what may have you in her 40s and married, or whatever it would have looked like for some people. And so I really enjoyed it. I thought there were moments, of course, that I identified with as a fellow person of Jamaican descent, and understanding how our dynamics are with family of different generations. And I thought it was funny. It's definitely a comical in certain instances, and I think it brought a lot of joy to me in reading it. So I was, of course, very excited to see when the TV show was picked up and developed by Hulu, which I also did enjoy. Now, of course, right, there are a few differences that between the book and the show that we will get into potentially in our discussion today. But I think it really did it well, especially when we have to understand that you can't translate everything over from a whole book of 200 odd pages to just an 8 episode mini series, and the episodes are like 24 minutes each, give or take, right? So I think all those things considered, and especially I think the fact that what I was listening to in a interview, but that somebody was interviewing Candice Carty Williams, her attention to detail, and realizing that the book was released in 2019, so there were particular things at the height of 2019 systemically, or going on in the world, that she had to change and tone down a little bit for the sake of obviously the limited time for this series, but also 2019 is not 2024. And those things need to be attended to if we're really going to tell a story in a meaningful way. And so I think both were done really well. I also always love when the writers of a book are kept, as part of the production. So she co-produced it as well in terms of the TV show. And so, yeah, I thought it was a great series, and one that I definitely enjoyed watching.
You know
So,
what? Oh, go on.
sorry. No, so the it's interesting because I didn't realize like people hated the book. I got it because I saw Jamaican, British, and I said, okay, we going to support this. So I lost patience for Queenie
Mm.
vacillating with between a teleman or if not teleman. Like, for me, patient was done. Like, Queenie, come on, teleman.
And
Like,
I think a lot of people felt that way.
I was just like, if me I forgot you this to the rest of the book, make a fling with the book. That's how I felt. So I was like, you know what? Let me just pause here. Um, and also where I was at the time, it's 2019. I have a 1 year old, so the patience to sit this through and go through it with Queenie wasn't there. But I think that's what I was just like, Queenie, my youth, like that's kind of where I was. I didn't hate it. It was just that I didn't have the patience with the character to go through. And even in the series, my husband was watching it for me and him say, yeah, man, because I binged it. And him say, you know what? After 3 episodes, me can't do no more Queenie, right? No, I'm done. So, not that it was just all the shenanigans because in 3 episodes, we got a lot. So he was just like, yeah, I haven't had enough. But it's very interesting that people have this feedback. So thanks for sharing that. Michaela, run it.
I could understand why that would be the case. That's a little bit more challenging to read, but I think that attitudinally played out well on screen because essentially she's having this thought, whereas if you're reading it, it's kind of like hurry up and get to that. Whereas it's a slower. I already kind of identified it as a slower start, but so was Black Cake. I feel like I didn't really know the premise of Black Cake until I listened to the audiobook, so I could see how people would either get lost in the beginning. The other thought as I was watching it is it really reminded me a lot of the Gabrielle Union series on BET, Being Mary Jane. I feel like this is what Mary Jane kind of would have been like in her 20s. Messy, all over the place, not fully thought out. And that's kind of what you get is like the diarrhea of all the responsibilities and the excitement that your 20s bring. And I think that especially as we get older and we get wiser and we understand we seem so far removed from the messiness that is the 20s. And fortunately, I could live my life offline where it doesn't impact. They don't really get into that in Queenie. It's more of like her and her friends and the group chat thing. So we don't see that messiness evolve as much. And I could totally relate to some of the things, not all the things, but some of the things that she was experiencing. And then I'm curious how the sexual fetishization of Black women came across in the book versus the series, because it seemed to be identified very early for me as a viewer, by like episode 2, if not 1.
Mm,
Which that didn't really become very clear um in that same book. Like I ended time point wise at the end of chapter 1, but that it didn't feel that way in the book necessarily. So I'm curious how that really played out. So Alexandra, I'm gonna lean on you with that, but that was one of the clear themes I think that I truly identified very early in this book,
Along that vein,
in
my
the in the
husband,
in the series. Sorry.
yeah, no, along that vein, my husband was watching it and he was like, she only date white men? Like, what was happening? When I first read the book, I was like, oh, she's in the UK. I guess, this is part of the thing. But as I was watching the series, I was like, yo, it was a legit question because she didn't seem to blink or bat an eye at any of the other dudes.
But
And
I think it made sense given her history with her stepfather, right? And her
it could
dad
be.
disowning, like her dad not owning up to her stepdad being a Black man, and she is thinking she's so much like her mom. The easiest way for her to not be like her mom is to date outside of her race and do something different. So I immediately caught on, but from the interactions, it just felt like such a fetish for all of the men that she dated. So it's not, really like that she was dating outside of her race. It's the way that they just like identified her body as this
Big Butty Queenie.
exotic thing period,
Hmm.
that they could utilize for their pleasure and pleasure only. And it was just very like, ugh, I just felt icky watching it.
It definitely was a big part of the book as well, something that I definitely noted, and I think something that also may have created some of the turmoil in responses to some of to the novel as well. And even in certain discussions I've had with friends who, started it and said they couldn't even bother finish it, right? They were like, yeah, the fetish, like it was just getting a little bit too much for them, right? And so I stuck it out, but I do try to finish novels. But yeah, I think that was something that that did definitely carry over into the show as well.
What was interesting for me was the switch, right? Did we remember what really triggered her to just say, "All right, let me follow the friend and just be liberated"? Was that ever clear? Because it went from her being prudish about her relationship with Tom and what they did to all out. She's all out. Did we remember why
It
she
was
did
his
that
lack of
switch?
response, I think, that really kind of pushed her over the edge. Like, he wouldn't respond to her text messages, and then when he responded, it was kind of like, we need a clean break. That means no communication. So after she's essentially sent him this very sexy picture that she thinks is going to draw out a different kind of response, she doesn't get the response that she wants, and she's just like, oh well, I'm going to show him I'm not over here wasting this dress. Like, in her mind, she's thinking that Tom is out here thinking about her and her feelings, and he clearly wasn't. He just was just like,
I think that's what I didn't like about the book. The tone in which Tom talked down to her, like it was very condescending. I may
mm,
say, hmm, you know what? God know
yeah.
who he make for who, and Duppy know who for frightened. So let me just
But
left
there's
this
an
alone.
entire context of their relationship that we don't see play out. So we don't
Yeah.
know how they met, where when they were good, like what that relationship was like. He expressed the need for her to open up and she couldn't. And essentially she probably couldn't open up because one, Tom couldn't relate, and two, she couldn't truly verbalize it for herself. And he wasn't really going to be patient with her in that
Mm-hmm.
regard.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about our friend.
Which
She my
one?
favorite character. No, no,
Oh
no,
yes.
not the other, not the work friend, and not the uni friend. What's she name?
Ches,
Jessica.
how do you
Chesky.
pronounce her name? That meow
I
meow.
don't
Did I
even
look?
remember.
It's Ches.
Let me
Because
see.
it's
I'm
not
gonna go
spelled
look it up.
how it's
No, it's spelled
pronounced.
like
Right.
KY.
Yeah.
Hulu
Um,
update.
Yeah.
Either way, the friend. I think the friend was funny. She was like, "Yo, I had on these boots, and the guy come take me to, let's say, Red Lobster.
A
You think
Thai
so these boots?"
restaurant.
Like what? She was killing me. And then the dude came up and was just like, "Yeah, I got a new job. Clears or something like that." I was, yo, my husband was
She's like,
hollering.
okay, so you get a discount? He's like 50% just for you. She's like, I can't work with that. And then roll her eyes when you gonna pick up the food.
No, but the part where she said before was like she's like, "Yo, Queenie, I saw this guy," and I was like, "Please don't let me look. Please don't let me look at." It looked like she work at one bank and she go pull up in banker in bank account and she said no
Yes.
money not in there. She said, "Mm-mm." I'm like, wow. I loved her character,
Yeah.
um, because I
I even knew we
definitely.
should come in the office and defend it for fear. I was just like, yes, that
By
is
the
my
way,
girl.
don't you know that what's his name from Champion?
Yes.
the the
I
the the, the co-worker, the white co-worker who tell
The
a
one
lie,
that married the brother, the
baby
one that
mother.
the baby mother to the US. Yeah.
Yeah, Bosco
Yeah.
baby mother
Yeah.
husband. Yeah,
Yeah.
our boyfriend. Yes, I was like,
Hmm.
what? I liked her energy, and I know somebody like that. In I just know people like that, and it was good to see. I think at one point though, it was hard for me to really understand until the very end the issue with Queenie and our mother. Because we knew it was something with the mother. I think it took a very long time to get to what really is the issue. And I wish they had kind of brought that in a little, or sped it up a little bit to get to that. And then because I think where they left it at the end, then could I give you a little bit more. So instead of stretch out the issue with the mother, kind of speed up what the issue with that's how I, and because I think we all, and here's why. I think we all hear how people have trauma with their mother and grandmother, right? What we don't see enough of is that path or that process to reconciliation. And that's what I would want to see more of. Not like, I don't like you. We get that part, right? Let's see what it looks like when there's this process to reconciliation. And I didn't see that. I wanted to see more of that. So I'm not sure if they got to that in the book, but that's what I would have loved to see.
Well, I
What
will
was
say,
the issue with her mom? Like, I don't think that there was one thing. Can we discuss? Because even by
So,
the end, I kind of have an idea,
so the
but
mother
it's
is
not
a
super clear.
jacket. By the way, big up to
No, 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 but that's not.
Jeffrey.
But that's not the issue. Yes, the mother is a jacket. Yes, but that's not the mother's issue. That's not her issue with her mom.
All right. So all right, let's back up.
That's not
Big
the
up to
grandmother
Jeffrey.
issue.
Right. So big
Yeah,
up to
and
Jeffrey from
Albert,
Fresh Prince of
Albert
Bel Air.
baby,
right?
Yeah.
Albert baby.
Right. And
Yes, yes.
so grandma get one letter from her little spooky back home, and the letter come, and she hide the letter from the new, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Me not know him as no other name.
I think it's
Jeffrey
Winfred I'm name.
Winford.
Let me
Anyway,
think to Ola. Let me go find.
so it would assume that she came up pregnant, based on what Missy when I read the book. She come up pregnant and she have a baby, and the white
Wilfred. I mean,
Wilfred,
yeah.
she have the baby, and the woman say, oh, this baby light, right? So we already know what you say. Now, the mother growing up, there was a big age gap, obviously, between the big sister and she. And from all intents and purposes, they seemed to have a good life. It all spiraled out of control when the big man did put her eye upon the mother, and the mother feel like, oh, I'm beautiful, I'm fabulous. And he says he's going to marry me. And the sister say, what want to do with you, little pitney? And, oh, me a hot girl. Paraphrasing. Um, and then she come back, I'm pregnant. And you have to remember that the mother is still young. So as a teenager, you are mad in love with this person, you rebel against the system, or in love me, and you swear say him I go left the wife. You understand. So the age and her understanding that this was never going to happen. No, you have a baby, you wrap up postpartum emotion, bangarang, age, all of that. And so her mother, I don't know if her mother was ever good. She just learned to survive and be a mom until
Mhm.
the next man come in her life, essentially. And when the next man come in, I guess maybe she wanted to show she was really devoted, because maybe she didn't want to show the baby father say, I'm, me a number one, I'm devoted, or whatever it is. And then he was an abuser and all these things. That's what I got from the little piece them what me get. And I have a very, very, very big imagination. So all if I never saw it go, I saw me did I put in the piece thing in there.
That's definitely what I got. And very interestingly enough, we didn't get as much of that storyline in the book, which I found is an interesting take. There was obviously, conflict between Queenie and her relationship with her mom, which obviously then translated to the whole family, on the whole. And obviously, Queenie's grandmother wanting to be like, yo, and her auntie, of course, obviously wanting to be like Linke Mara, and all of these things. But we didn't get the extent of the storyline between the mother, her relationship, the stepfather, and all of these things in the novel. So that was an interesting angle for me between the differences between the novel and the TV show.
and it still wasn't even clear the mother I mean the mother decision for get to a separate apartment and put her in the apartment is wild. But what led to that, we never really get clear. We assume that there was maybe some abuse in there, and we're not even sure why she take the abusive boyfriend to jail and why she get money. Like that wasn't clear. So again, it
Yeah, the
leaves it to
court
my
case. Yeah.
imagination to fling in all of the blanks them, for what could have happened. Maybe in scammer out our pension, me no know. So so but it was a sizable enough money, so we just didn't get that aspect of it.
Yeah. I agree. It's like there were still like a lot of open-ended ideas around the relationship with her mom and why she avoided, but sometimes it really isn't that complicated. I guess is it's really just a series of things that as children you can't get over. As a viewer looking in, you kind of think, well, okay, she has abandonment issues. Yes, there was abuse there, but we don't know what type of child she was or how she reacts to things. So for some, it may seem like hurry up and react, but we've seen her. She's very slow to react. She's internalizes a lot of things. And that seems to have always been part of her character. And they allude to her mom being the same way the grandparents do, in terms of personality differences between I the way they kind of thought about strength. And I thought, the way that the grandmother really encapsulated her speech at the end around what strength looks like and how it looks different. I'm like, man, that's a moment plenty pitney nugget. So I think it was almost like a nice nod to those who have similar relationships but will never get the closure of having that with their own parent. At least they can kind of see it and what it could look like, from that perspective. And I don't think that Queenie and her mom necessarily have a closure conversation. It just is what it is, and you don't really know if you can't indicate whether she's going to. She does say, I want to have a relationship with her. I'm going to talk to her at some point, I think.
But that's what
Um,
I was saying. Like, I
yeah.
wanted to see more of that struggle back and forth versus I don't want to talk to my mom, right?
Mhm.
Because we've all seen that. What I want to see is more of what we saw to the end. Initially, she was steadfast, man, I'll take the money. Then she decided she going to take the money. And then you started to see the she lean in and she pull back, she lean in and she pull back, because that's really what it is, right? On this thing, it's not like, oh, we've cleared the air and now we're good again. No, and I saw it work, but it would be good to see how that is played out on screen. So I want to switch gears a little bit. We did talk about, you know the sexual fetish of the black woman. I don't really want to go too much into that because I think hyper focusing on that takes away from some of the other themes that were also in the series. How she was treated while she was in the hospital, and like they're asking her questions, and some of them was like, "Really? Is this the question you gonna ask me?" The lack of bedside manners and care into how she was. So we see that play out in the UK here in a medical facility, and how she was trying to be seen at work. Now, granted, Queenie had, if me I went Queenie manager, me no know how much pip me never put Queenie pan, because Queenie just, but those issues aside, you saw that she was trying to progress in some way at work, and those opportunities were just like, all right, there. Go back to what we hired you for type things. And so those are themes that were very important because they all played a role in her spiral, for lack of a better word, because in her mind, not no good, nothing good is happening not at work, not with the man, mommy, whatever. So I just wanted to call out like those are two critical themes that I saw that could be overshadowed in her sowing her wild oats.
Me really didn't want to know why Queenie show up to work so. Like she never have no autopsy. She go in her t-shirt and then try pitch new idea. Like, come, my girl, your co-worker dressed for the job. Like, come on, come on, come on. I mean, it's probably part of her character. And I know it's not like the sole focus of, but it was just those little, like, if you're not gonna get the role, don't let, your unprofessionalism or, how you could, when she did have on this scamp, Lord God, I said, no, no, Queenie, no, no. Them not gonna take and it's unfortunate, but they're not gonna take you seriously. And I think, all of they didn't even touch on that. They just touched on her attitude and her behavior and her um not getting the role. But so I think she also played a part in her not getting the opportunities that she
Absolutely.
truly wanted, because she came and then she came with the pitch. It was haphazard. It wasn't thought out. She was late to meetings, late to work. She had a lot going on, but she was still trying to have moments at work because that's probably the only thing that she could focus on at the time. But that was the only aspect in which I was disappointed with her in, was her approach to work. Yes, they were wrong, but also she didn't put her best foot forward either.
And she said it. There's that scene where, right before she gets drunk at the kind of like happy hour work thing that they had, or right before, and her boss, her manager comes up to her and is like, "Yo, take some time off, take a long weekend or whatever." And she was like, "I can't be by myself because that's when the demons start to come in when I need to come to work and stay busy." One thing I did think was a interesting sort of difference in terms of work life and like her pitches and things. So obviously her pitches were definitely black focused, right? She was talking about wanting to have various discussions, whether it was black women who and black people who are critical, or activism and things to that nature. And I saw definitely noted the sort of not necessarily downplay, but compared to the book, it was written because it debuted in 2019, right? So it's sort of written, I'm assuming, at the sort of peak of Black Lives Matter, global protest going on, pre-COVID, of course. And I saw it, obviously it's still sort of in the realm that she was discussing in terms of what her pitches were for the job here and what she hoped to put out, but they were lesser to an extent, right? It was a tremendous part of the work. I mean, work regardless was still not necessarily going well for her in the novel either. But I noted definitely the way that time period played and how it shifted the angles of the book versus the movie or the TV show rather.
And then look how she leave and do our own little series, and our
Hmm.
boss come back and say, "Oh, this is wonderful." Like she hasn't been pitching those ideas to you for
Right.
how long, from when time, and all of a sudden now that she's done it by herself, it's because she can visually see the reaction that it's getting. It's not necessarily that it was an important story to tell, but she knew the power of social media, and that the story and the position in which she told the story, but that's essentially what Queenie was trying to offer in her work on a regular basis. And it wasn't until it was recognized externally that they all of a sudden saw value in her work.
All right. So, what was the funniest moment in the series? I know my husband was hollering when the brown youth say him call him him call her name. He was like, "Stop, stop." So he cracked up over that. because he felt he had all the
Oh,
strength.
the destroyer, the
Yes, the
defender, what you
destroyer,
call
the
it? Yes,
defender. I was
yes.
just like,
I'm
what?
like, hey, we are talking about. Oh, the yes, yes, the Indian guy
Yes,
named his personal parts. Him name it the defender, Lord,
our destroyer,
the
something. I was
destroyer.
just
Yeah, me
like,
think say a destroyer, and him not damage nothing. The only thing about damage are him marriage.
one thing was funny is the woman out of street with the mic. Jezebel.
Yo, she could not catch a break. No, I was just like, Queenie, what? Oh
Everywhere she
my
went.
gosh. Yes, yes, yes.
Um, what
I'm trying
else?
to
There
think.
was definitely some other moments, but the woman on the
In the
street.
club, that was a good scene too.
Yes,
So there's a scene in the club where it
the
was I think in the, in a lot of ways, I think it covered. There are a lot of things that the TV show tried to nail on, right? Whether it's gentrification and it just didn't hit the nail. Hit
it
the nail.
wasn't as hard
Yeah, it
hitting.
wasn't
It
it
wasn't
wasn't as
clear.
hard hitting,
Hmm.
but there were points that could be drawn out. So there's a scene when they're at the club and sort of get into a disagreement. I'll say, I don't want to give away
No,
too much.
it wasn't. Listen, if we're not,
Are we
it's a
doing
spoiler show,
spoilers?
a spoiler
Okay.
show
All
because
right then.
go on, go on. Let me see if you
So
go
since
say
we're
what may I
doing
say.
spoilers, there's a scene in the club where everybody at full jai them little self or whatever, and Queenie, and they've always described her throughout the show as we sort of going back to the fetishization as being curvaceous. But then a white woman in the
Big
club just
Batty
decides,
Queenie. Come on,
yes.
guys. That same color. Big Batty Queenie.
But then a white woman in the club decides to grab her butt. And obviously, naturally, she has a reaction. Her friend has a reaction, and they end up being the ones that get kicked out of the club. Because the white girl does her very Karen-esque thing and start bow down the place and say, she hit me, and one bag of thing. I mean, structural issues aside, I did think that scene was funny.
Yeah, but it goes back to the fetishizing the black woman's body
Right.
isn't limited to
To
just a male gaze.
right.
It's also female.
And then
Um
weaponized against her.
against exactly. Exactly. And then let's talk about when she therapy. So this doesn't have to be a long discussion. Therapy when grandma have to come get her a therapy and grandma they quarrel about the money she have to spend. Listen, if nobody not ever grandmother will complain about too much money they have to spend if you come pick you up somewhere. So them coming around to her doing therapy because the grandmother was very stern about family business to stay a family business. And again, it's always the grandfather that's cool and just be like, you know, there's always there has to be a character that is a symbol of calm, and that was the grandfather and a voice of reason sometime. Other than the time when the grandmother said Queenie said she'll go bathe and the grandfather said, remember the water bill because Queenie loves take bath. If that is not a very Caribbean thing, light the remember the light, turn off the light,
Yes, yes.
remember the water bill. But I
I think
did
there were, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was like, there were a lot of like chuckle and laugh out loud moments like that throughout the. So I don't see one that like hysterically stands out to me. But there were also a lot of good tender moments. So even as Queenie's taking a bath and her grandma comes in and is like washing, like she's like it's intrusive, but she doesn't mind because it's somebody that like it's a moment that she's having with her grandma, like and the grandmother's like, "Me see everything we have already. No, no
Right.
matter,
In
no matter
true
fit."
granny form. We done
Yeah,
do this
it's
a long
very true.
time.
Granny. Yes, yes, yes. So
Let's
I
not
love the moments between her and her grandparents, and even her cousin. Like her cousin. Like they were all very well-rounded characters to kind of bring out Queenie's life and her family. And it showed like how much support that she had. Even if they didn't really understand her, they were still very supportive of who she was, and they gave her her space. But they knew when to push and they knew when to back off. So I thought that was kind of sweet. There were a lot of sweet moments like that.
The
Well, the
auntie.
grandmother was my favorite character though.
No man, the auntie say, never trust, never there with a Gemini man. She say, Arthur, never
She
there
was
with a
like, "But
Gemini
Auntie,
man.
you
And then
really mean
Queenie say, "Are you
Gemini,
using
or you mean
Gemini?"
white?"
Right.
Yeah. And at one point to the end, auntie do one whole sermon over the food, and the grandmother go, amen, like cut it short. But I did like those elements where family is not perfect. There are all these different characters, but these caster characters, they are a familial unit, and for different reasons you like them or not. So I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I think the
So
casting was really well, very
yeah,
similar to Champion. So
champion, yeah,
Candice Carty Williams, big up yourself. You
yeah,
did on the casting, and it was, I don't know. I'm sure she's not the only person who determined that, but I think the casting was done really well too.
I liked it a lot. um when she finally have a crush on the little fella, maybe become in the binge watch it, may say,
Frank,
why, eh?
that's Frank.
Frank.
Was that it? Frank?
Frank,
Yeah.
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 Like at one point she's like, a pen, okay, like to in your feelings because him have possibly will heap a girl. So again, I feel like either I was watching it and things miss me, or Frank becoming an interest came really fast given the speed of the series.
No, but her and Frank were friends because she knows Frank through.
No, I know that, but she
Yeah.
never see him in a one romantic way.
Well, she's
I
been
think
dating
there
all
were,
white guys. She's
but I
never
think there
really
were
been
hints,
interested.
right? There were hints. So like
But she
there's a
never they pick
scene,
it. Him when they drop them hard. She
yeah,
never they pick him up. She was
for
not
sure,
picking
but
them up.
like the moment, I think there's the scene when he helps her move, right? And he says something and she's like, "Oh, he says something kind of flirtatious to her. I can't remember what exactly. And she's like, "Oh, leave it to him now to try to say something." And then, as you said, Carrie, two twos, him get a call and he's like, "Yo, babes." So she's like, "Oh, it's over, right? Like, never mind. Then I'll just keep doing whatever else I'm doing." So, to the point that I think we made earlier, there was obviously a slowness in Queenie's evolution or ability to sort of maybe a self awareness, um and an emotional intelligence as well, that I think might have also been a challenge for people whether they're reading or watching the TV show.
For sure. Um, and I guess the only point I have left is, oh dear, Tom come back with flowers at the end.
Me
Yo, I
glad say she
want
dash
beat
them
you.
way.
I want like boy with the like what? Where you that got Tom? I really wanted to the satisfaction of saying she's like Tom, like sure.
Me did want her for tell him for go about him business. Come on from me. Come on
No,
from me.
but she obviously take the flowers and then dash them away. Make him go
Yeah.
back with the flowers. She should never take and then we not see what happened with Frank.
Yes.
If Frank
Yes.
walk off or she claim Frank and say, come on, boo. Like me don't know. It does segue. I mean, it's like, why deny us the satisfaction? But you can tell us what really happened in the book.
I mean, there were still, even in the book, a lot of unknowns, in the same way that you're saying you wanted more from the show as well. I think that was also done intentionally. Just for
I,
me, it was like, we can't, I think it would have been too easy to wrap up everything and say, "Oh yeah, man, and now show over here so and I live great life and
No,
sort
me
out
never want she
ourselves
live
and
great life.
everything."
Me did want she tell Tom say, listen, you're all drunk, crow. You get new woman quick, right? Tell me about a clean break, right? You get new woman. Me, then you come round and come show up with flowers at my good housewarming. Like me need to tell you, Not even 1 cent, 2 cent, 5 cent, a whole $100 bill worth of things. Like
Him do want a trace off for true though.
exactly. He needed
Yeah.
a proper telling
Him need
off,
a proper one.
like
Yeah.
a
The thing
good
said
cuss
the
out.
friend should have cussed him out. The friend would have give him a
Yeah,
royal
for sure. She would have did do a better job than
dealings.
Queenie.
All right. I guess the last thing, I'm gonna go do it just for completeness, but it not really matter to me. The friend and the texting them.
The group message, you mean?
Yes. The one was say, oh, she take her man. I'm like, me not have time for this here. That's me just I does not. I mean, I say, oh, no match it out. So the girl when they talk to the guy, so she take how you match this out. You never want to share who he was. So how did she know that this guy was like he never make common sense. So how? So I'm just like, you know what? Me just I bring it up, but
I was happy for her response to her when she saw her
in
in
the
the
coffee
coffee
shop.
shop.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like, "I'm being kind, but don't think we good." I love that because it was her setting clear boundaries for herself and the people in her life. And that girl would have probably, she wanted her ear to kind of lend and kind of catch up. And she thought that it was just going to pick up right where it left off. And I think Queenie really sharing that, no, that's not the case. I can show you grace, but you didn't give me the same, and had you not walked into this coffee shop, we probably wouldn't have even had this conversation. So don't even think for a second that I'm about to let you back in. And she ultimately did the same thing with Tom. Of course, she wasn't as dismissive to Tom as she was to what a friend named Cassandra.
No,
Cassandra.
oh, it was Cassandra.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And what one time I did think that Cassandra and the other and Darcy were the same, but when I saw, but it's because they were doing yoga in the hot yoga in the studio. I was like, oh no, this it's a different girl. What was interesting to me is there like the fact that she had all of her friends in one group chat. Like I feel like her best friend should be on one side and then Cassandra on the other one because they didn't all seem like they were friends.
they
So
were
it
not.
seemed odd to me that they were all in a group chat together because to me they didn't their friendship nucleus was Queenie. Like they weren't all friends.
It was a convenient chat for Queenie and nobody else.
Yes,
Yeah.
clearly. That must have been WhatsApp. Clearly. She's like, I'm just updating everybody all at the same time one time because I don't have time to be deliberating in two different group chats.
but
I
of
guess.
but of all of them is it's Darcy. I'm gonna keep messing up her name. Is it Chesky or Cheska? Um, those two were close enough to her because they came to her house or they were familiar enough. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was interesting. So overall,
But so
I
was Cassandra. She gone over the people them house for bar mitzvah. What was it? Because that was Cassandra's dad's house. That was Cassandra's family's house. So they it's not like them just become friend. Them
no,
a
no,
long
no, me
time
not
friend.
talk. No, me a talk. Them a come a fear her yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
Cassandra was just as close to her, I think,
y-
as Darcy at least.
okay.
Because
The
the way that they framed it, like they look closer.
Darcy was the work friend, and at one
Mm-hmm.
point
Darcy
Darcy
was
was
the work
tired of the
friend.
mess.
Yeah.
Darcy was
Because
like, "Oh,
Darcy
it's
a
a new
cover for
year."
her at work.
Yeah.
Darcy a carry whatever she
Darcy's like,
need,
I gotta
water.
worry about myself.
Yeah. And everything was very one-sided. It was a one-sided
Sided
friendship.
relationship. Yeah.
There's a scene where Queenie and Darcy are talking up the things about what them do with them man or whoever. And as soon as Darcy turned and started tell her business, Queenie was like, okay, cool. But anyways, about this man pan the app where me meet and XYZ. So yeah, I think, it was also a reflecting point in terms of
Yeah.
who her friends are, what they do for her, you know, and there's a trend. Sometimes there was a transactional basis there depending on the friend.
And Darcy kind of gave her some ice at one point for the new year when she was like, I'm trying to be more focused, and Queenie, I try to tell the business, and she's just like, I'm just really focused, and she kind of picked that up, but Queenie never really fully get the memo, like when Tom saying need a clean break. So I do feel like it's very one sided, but I also don't know if we're just seeing this that she's needy because the spiral from Tom and everything else. We don't know what their relationship was before everything spiraled out of control. So I'll give her that. Um while we gave some spoilers, we didn't give away a lot. There's like you said, the series had funny moments, but there were some themes in there. I think guys watching this might have a huge issue with, you know, the sex in the series and how much of it there was in the series. Um it can be jarring to see or experience, but we we lose sight of the more important underlying issue there, and how black women's bodies are viewed and portrayed, um and how we have to be very careful with these things.
And the negotiation, Carrie, right? Like
Yeah,
there's the issue of, is it okay for me to want to be sexually liberated versus what my
yeah,
auntie and granny I go think about me, and um the all of the negotiations that I think black women have to deal with. And as we said for a few other things, maybe there weren't things that were as open or as direct in the TV show because again, I think they had a lot to work with in a limited space of time. But these are all themes that I think if you really sit with the some of the issues at hand that definitely come about.
yeah, because even in the scene where grandmother wash her back and said, "No worry, you not have nothing with me see already," right? In that moment, she's naked in the bathtub and grandmother beat her. But when she dressed up as the Playboy bunny or go, grandma said, "Jesus, take,
Mm.
oi," And it's wait, she have on clothes. So what's the difference between she have on clothes? It looked like a bath suit, but she still have on clothes dress versus, you know, her naked in the bathtub and you washing her back. So, her having to negotiate that with the auntie, going from tell people saying that they're with Gemini and they quote scriptures in between. Like like you said, is a lot to negotiate about. Am I, should I, could I, all those things. So I like the series. I think it was funny as always. I feel like we're at a point where, wow, we have multiple programming on TV where it's not a full reflection of me in my 20s or at 25, or you, but there is Jamaican and Caribbean culture on on screen, and it is just really good to see, because what I think Candice does well with Queenie and with Champion is, like, I feel like people don't know how to tell Jamaican and Caribbean stories because they fetishize the yaman, the ganja smoking, and all the stereotypes around what it is to be a Caribbean or a Jamaican person. At the end of it, we're normal people. And it's just that our culture allows us to react different or tell different stories. Here, you see a story of somebody emigrating to another country, the complexities of having two different lives. Most immigrants, we have two lives, the lives back home and the lives that we come here to live. And that creates rich storytelling. And so, what I love about the series is just that it's not, there's culture in it and very nuanced things, but it's not always about very overt tropes or aspects of culture that we see, and that allows connectivity, right? Because this is not just for me who born in the region, you think of, or children who be born here and want to see themselves reflected, right? um in it. right? What does that look like? So I'm glad we're wrapping up the season on Queenie.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a sitcom, right? I felt like it's a sitcom that I would be watching, whether it looked like Fresh Off the Boat, Blackish, Abbott Elementary, where it's situational comedy and it has real heavier moments. Whereas Champion was like a drama, it's a drama series. And so when we look at it from that perspective and just like I think both series did a really good job of interweaving Caribbean culture in an authentic way, but staying true to what they were, which was a drama series and a sitcom. Both, adapted very differently. So I enjoyed it. I think it's something that I would rewatch, and I found really funny moments and educational moments, and I think people should really just enjoy it for that sake. Everything doesn't have to be like the biggest explosive best things in sliced bread. We deserve all the different stories. So that's what I loved about this series in particular, and even without reading the book. So
I agree with both of you, and I think even the fact that we're getting more of also like Black Caribbean British TV awareness, I think too, which is something I definitely didn't have. I mean, from a historical perspective and thing, I have cousins and family that I know are in England, but I until very recently, we've had a slew of shows, whether it's Champion and others that have been covered on Reels and Rhythms, that we're getting more awareness and exposure to Black British culture over here on this side of the ocean, which I think is also a great part of us even just understanding who we are as a diaspora, right? There were movies obviously shot in the US or shot in Canada or shot in the region that I'm sure get casted out much farther, just geographically, but it's nice to also understand the nuances of Black British people, and see Brixton and all of these things that you might sort of hear about if you're familiar with the Caribbean diaspora in that way, and being able to see them brought to screen, I thought was great, especially for us on this side.
And I want to shout out, as we wrap up, if you're looking for something to do in the summer, the original Caribbean sitcom straight out of London City, which is Desmond's, can be streamed on Amazon Prime. Listen, I love Desmond's. The character Pork Pie, it was all centered around a barber shop, and it was situational comedy. And I grew up watching that in Jamaica, so it is streaming. Go support it. Um, if you want more Caribbean energy and flavor, I mean, what a way to wrap up Caribbean American Heritage Month. We have variety on screen. We're getting the things them out of Brixton, Leeds, and Birmingham. All right.
definitely your ratings.
Yes, that's what I was going to next. So, are we ready? We are doing the ratings. So, Alexandra, since you are the guest, the show is Queenie. We do a ratings. Oh, let me back up. I explain to
Oh,
everyone.
yes,
So,
me never know.
yes, let me
Where you at?
explain. Let me explain. So, oh, I mean, we're gonna go back to the ratings. There was aspects of this series that have reminded me of Harlem.
I also thought about Insecure.
I definitely could see some Insecure in there too.
Mhm.
So I really like that. So we came up with this system of when we think of Caribbean entertainment, right? When we want to see, we think of accent, but accent is on a spectrum,
Mhm.
right? Because a person in Jamaica has a very different language, or in the region speaks differently from someone who lives in New York. Caribbean people in New York speak very differently from Caribbean people in the Midwest or the South or the West, right? And so we think of accents and how good do we need to get the accent? And we use the accent to say, well, if you have a walk on rule and it's a Rasta man, get the accent right, right? Or a nanny, because those are the two characters they love to give us, nanny and Rastaman. And then we also rate it based on the storyline, right? Is it a strong character, strong storyline around a character of Caribbean heritage? So we do character and storyline Are they strong characters and storyline, really developed and fleshed out for a Caribbean person, and not just something they just juke up and just say Ray, right? And so we said accent. It's we could get away on not having a perfect accent a la Jasmine Guy pa Harlem, because we think she gets the character of who she's playing, a rich uptown Jamaican woman, stush woman, or whatever it is, right? So with that said, for Queenie, we have accent, character, and storyline, and it's out of 5. So, what are you giving it in terms of accent from 1 out of 5, Alexandria?
I'd probably give it like a 4 or 5. I mean, you also have the nuance there of them living in the UK. So, somebody who it's different for everybody, right? But somebody who, like her grandmother, has been in the UK for how many ever decades or so, it's going to the twang. I got twang a little different, but I definitely would give it a 4.
Michaela,
I would have to agree. I would say maybe a 3.5. I think Winfred accent was kind of off. The grandfather
Him
hi,
from St.
and the
Lucia.
and the aunt and the aunt. He's from Saint Lucia, but he's playing a Jamaican, so that's why I
Yes.
gotta like, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
hi,
yeah.
heart agree with you, Michaela, on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. The
All
grandfather,
right.
and really, it's minor.
It's really minor. It doesn't
It's
have to
really
be.
minor.
It
Yeah,
was doable. It's doable.
yeah, yeah.
In terms of characters, what's the rating for the characters? The development of the characters in holistically, not individually, because then we'd be here forever.
I say a 5. I like the character development.
I'd
Alexandria.
I'd agree. I'd give it a 5 too. I think having read the book, there are some things that I knew a little more than what maybe the TV show gave, but I'd give it a 5 as well.
All right. I gave it a 4. The mother was one of the antagonists, and I just felt like we did need a little bit more from the mother. So, cuz then, but so that was just me. Me grade hard. In terms of storyline, what are we giving it? Alexandria, you go.
This is harder because now I'm trying to figure out which side of
All
my
right, we'll
braid I
come back
should
to
be
you.
on.
We'll come back to you. Michaela, what are you giving it?
Storyline a solid 4, but I don't know why in particular. Like,
Mm,
I enjoyed it. I don't know that you could have added more to it. Um, yeah, a 4.
you
I
ready,
think I'd
Alex?
give it, yeah, I'd give it a 4 as well. Um, all things considered.
Yeah. I think that's where I'm leaning, only because, again, there were some aspects of character that I really wanted to see more of, but is there ever a 5 perfect storyline? But I think overall Queenie gets a 4,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
I think
maybe
Champion
one.
was the only storyline we gave a 5.
Yeah, yeah. Y- so again, Candice Carty Williams is up there. Her
She
two
up there,
shows.
up there,
She,
up there. Candice, big up yourself, my girl. Anything you know, me there.
yes, her projects are fan favorites over this side.
Yeah, yeah.
And so thank you for joining us for this season of Reels and Riddims. We will be back in the fall, but we see up on the social media, do the things. And just send us a message, email us up, tell us where you're watching, tell us what you want to see, what you want us to talk about. And yeah, thank you for being on this ride with us. Honestly, it's been so much fun. So thank you. Thank you for joining us, Alexandria.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Mi-
yes. Breadfruit Media family.
Yeah.
Any last
Yes, this
words,
is fun.
Michaela?
No, no, this has been an exciting journey. Thank you, Carrie, for us just actually doing the thing. I talk we talk about it, and it's been such a great experience just to talk the things them with you as usual. So looking forward to our fall season, but looking forward to the little break we're gonna get. So until next time, Carrie, back over to you for close out.
There's no more closeout. Walk good
Oh,
later,
we're
little
done.
more.
All right.
All these things.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.